Hi, I'm Corey Mansky with Victory Retail Support, and I'm here to help you install this monster. This is the JBL loudspeaker display. There's three things that you should remember though before we get started. The first is you have pre-assembly instructions that allow you to build things like this. You need to make sure that you have all of your pre-assembly done before you get onto the installation component of this, because we need to make sure all this stuff is ready to go before we get started. The second thing to remember is I'm going to refer to model numbers. I'm also going to refer to carton letters, okay? For anything that has JBL products in it, you'll see that the actual model number is on the box. Really easy to find. Then anything else that has brackets, screws, frames, stuff like that, that stuff all has a model number on the box itself. And the last letter in the model number is the carton that I'm referring to. Carton A, carton B, carton C, whatever. It's the last letter in that model number, okay? The second thing that's important to remember is when we're looking at this and I start saying left and right, left is all the way to the left as I'm looking at the gondola. Right is all the way to the right as I'm looking at the gondola, and that's important to remember. So our first couple steps are we're going to install our mat and our horizontal bars, and then we can get started. All right, I said that one of the first steps was going to be we're going to place our mat. But really, before we place our mat, it's super important to determine where your power is. This is a power display, obviously, so we need to make sure that we have good power. In the gondola that you're working on, you'll probably have a hole here in the base, and the power is located underneath the gondola most of the time. We need to make sure we have working power before we even start doing anything. So that's actually your first step here. Before beginning this step, make sure to find out where the power outlet is located near this display, because this display will require power. You might have to ask for operations or store management for help. Also, please note that the power might be underneath the gondola shelf. Install the black styrene cover, which is packed in carton K. You're going to put it on top of the gondola metal shelf. You're going to place it on the base with the two-sided tape down, and then check to make sure that the cutout in the styrene lines up with the electrical cutout in the base of the shelf. While holding it down, lift on one end to peel away the double-sided tape, stick down, and then repeat those steps in the other places where there is double-sided tape until all 6 pieces are adhered to the base. Find the 2 horizontal hang tubes in carton A. You're going to be inserting these into the back of the gondola. The top horizontal hang tube is going to be about 44 inches above the base. The bottom horizontal hang tube is going to be about 8 inches above the base. But the easy way to do this is to just count the slots from the bottom up. So to set the bottom horizontal hang tube, you're going to count up 9 slots and put that horizontal hang tube into the 9th slot. And then counting from the bottom up again, you're going to put the top horizontal hang tube into the 45th slot. Then make sure that each of the bars is upright and level. With some help, take the 6-foot pre-assembled backboard panel you did earlier and place it on the base, leaning it up against the back of the gondola so that it does not fall forward. Make sure the left side is lined up with the center of the left standard as shown. The pre-assembled metal frame is now ready for the metal cabinet with electronics to be inserted. Unpack carton E with the metal cabinet. Now, with some help, slide the metal cabinet back end first into the metal frame. When it's inserted, you're going to see that the plug strip is on the right in the front. And you want to make sure that the back of the metal cabinet is flush with the back of the metal frame. Attach 8 long screws through the metal frame and into the sides of the metal cabinet. The metal cabinet back will be flush against the back of the metal frame. Note, if you have any difficulty lining up the cabinet holes, as long as you have 2 screws in, you'll be fine. Then, with some help, place the metal frame with the metal cabinet on the floor directly in front of the gondola, roughly lined up with the square hole in the 6-foot backboard. Before starting this next step, be sure you've located the electrical outlet that this display will be plugged into and ask store personnel if needed. Go to the front of the metal cabinet and locate the 15-foot power cord coming out of the top of the plug strip. You're going to pull that 15-foot cord through the metal cabinet out the back and then through the square hole in the backboard so that the cord is between the back panel and the gondola. Then, with some help, position the back panel so that one person can go behind the back panel while the other holds it up. That's important. Then, when the power cable passes through the square hole, it must also be fed behind the lower horizontal tube, between the tube and the gondola. Then, feed the power strip cord down through the cutout in the base into a powered outlet. Plug it in and test the power strip by turning it on and off. Once confirmed, turn the power off until later. Find carton 39-HR-SV6-24 and remove the gray 5-wire harness. Please note there's also a black cable in the same bag as the wire harness, and you're going to need that cable later, so leave it in the bag. This harness is speaker wires, and each wire is marked front right, front left, rear left, and center. Position the backboard far enough away from the back of the gondola so one of you can get behind it to run the wires while the other holds the backboard upright. From behind the backboard, take the gray speaker wire marked front left and pass it behind the lower horizontal tube and through the lower left hole in the backboard as shown. Remember to tie a loop in the wire from the front so that it cannot be pulled back through the hole very easily. Now, get the front right wire and pass it behind the lower horizontal tube and through the third hole from the left at the bottom of the backboard as shown. And again, tie a loop in the cable so that it can't be pulled through the hole easily. The other 3 wires of the harness get passed through the square hole from the back side of the backboard and are left dangling down the front of the backboard for now. Continue to have one person hold the backboard upright for the next step. Look inside the metal cabinet and locate 2 cables with yellow jacks marked sub 1 and sub 2. Pull those out of the back of the metal cabinet and through the square hole in the backboard. Once behind the backboard, wind sub 1 cable straight down behind the lower horizontal tube and through the hole near the bottom of the backboard. It's the hole directly below the square hole between the holes that you ran the gray speaker wires through. The sub 2 cable is meant to go through the hole in the backboard on the far lower right, but it will not reach it this time. Bring that cable as far to the right as you can, just past the slotted gondola upright, and tuck it behind the horizontal hang tube. Then, tie the supplied string to the sub 2 yellow jack as shown, and if you have tape, use it as shown as well. This step requires you to open 3 different cartons and retrieve only the power cables. Find speaker subwoofer stage 220p carton and the power cord. It should still be in the carton. Then find the receiver MA710 AV carton and retrieve that power cord from the carton. And then locate the carton 39-HARSV-24. Please note, this is the carton that you just retrieved the gray speaker wire harness from, and the black cord should still be in the bag. Once you have all 3 power cords, one will be long and the other 2 will be close in length, but one of them is approximately 2 inches longer than the other. From this point forward, we'll refer to those as long, medium, and short. Now, working in the front of the backboard, insert the long cord wall plug end first through the lowest hole on the right side of the backboard, behind the horizontal tube and up to the square hole. Feed through the square hole from behind the backboard and let it dangle down in front of the backboard. Be sure to tie a loop in the opposite end so that it doesn't get pulled back through the hole. Then take the medium cord and feed it wall plug end first through the hole located directly below the square hole, the one that already has the yellow jack. Then behind the horizontal tube and up and out the square hole and let it dangle, and tie a loop in the opposite end as usual. The small cord passes through the hole directly above the far right hole in the back of the backboard. But this cord is the shortest, so tie a loop first, then feed it wall plug end first through, and go directly to the square hole and pull through. Please note, the small cord does not pass under either horizontal tubes. This is the only cable in this entire installation that will not pass behind the horizontal tube. Now, reposition the backboard as close to the back of the gondola as you can, and lean it back so that it does not fall forward. With 2 people, lift the metal frame and metal cabinet onto the base of the gondola and place it as close to the front edge of the base as you can, but be careful. Note, it should also line up with the square hole in the backboard, and it should be centered on the metal cabinet back opening. By positioning the metal frame and cabinet to the front of the gondola, this gives you some extra room behind to continue running cords and wires. The metal frame and cabinet will eventually be attached to the backboard. Once in place, there should be enough slack in the yellow sub-2 jack to be able to pull it through the far right lower hole in the backboard and pull it through the hole and tie a loop like you did before. Reach into the metal cabinet from the back and locate the gray wire harness inside. Pull the harness and connector through the back of the cabinet and connect it to the other harness behind the backboard. Please be sure that these are fully engaged with one another and set firmly. There are 3 power cords and 3 gray speaker wires currently dangling from the square hole in the front of the backboard. Take the wire marked center and pull it through the back of the cabinet and up through the large hole in the top of the cabinet. Take the other wire marked rear right and pull it into the back of the cabinet and through the large hole on the right side of the cabinet. Please note, you might have to slide the electronics board inside the metal cabinet forward just a little bit to be able to access that large hole. Take the gray speaker wire marked rear left and pull it through the back of the metal cabinet and through the large hole on the left side of the metal cabinet. Now, pull all 3 of the electrical cords through the back of the cabinet to the front and plug them into the plug strip. If any of those cords are close but don't make it all the way to the outlets, that's okay. You can leave them in the cabinet and you'll be able to plug them in once this thing is in its final position. Okay, so for the one cable that isn't through the hole yet, you tied a string to this sub-2 cable. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to reach down and I'm going to grab this string and I'm going to pull this cable through here so that it's through the hole so that I can continue. All right, one of the next steps is we're going to hang this backboard, and once this is hung, you're not really going to be able to get back here, so it's important that we get all of the cables through all the correct holes. Then we're going to make sure that all of these are correct before we actually hang this thing. Remember, there's nothing in this hole, nothing in this hole. You have power here, Sub here, power here, speaker here, speaker here, speaker here, speaker here, speaker here, sub and power here. Find carton G, which is the light box. With some help, bring the light box over to the display and carefully lay it face down across the metal frame temporarily. Untether the cord coming out of the light box and let it dangle. Then, grab the cable that's attached to the light box, run it behind the backboard, between the gondola and the horizontal hang tubes, and bring the end of it through the square hole through the back of the metal cable and plug it into the power adapter. Now, grab the power supply adapter and plug it into the lowest outlet in the plug strip. And you're going to leave the light box on top of the metal frame temporarily and go on to the next step. In this step, you will permanently attach the backboard to the gondola and the metal frame and cabinet to the backboard. At this time, it is very important to be sure all wires of any kind have been correctly run behind the horizontal tubes and there are no wires between the front face of the horizontal tubes and the back side of the backboard. With two people, slide the backboard all the way up to the horizontal tubes, lift the backboard a few inches while pushing toward the horizontal tubes, and drop the backboard brackets over both the upper and lower horizontal tubes. The backboard is now secure and cannot fall forward, but please be sure that there are no wires pinched between the bottom of the backboard and the base of the display. This is important because the backboard must rest on the base of the display with no wires under it to carry the weight of the backboard. Now mount the light box onto the gondola, inserting the brackets on the light box into the top slots so that the light box is flush with the top of the gondola. Once mounted in the slots, there will be a narrow gap between the top of the back panel and the bottom of the light box. Feed the exposed light box wires through that gap and let the wires fall behind the back panel. Locate the metal bracket in carton F and mount it to the backboard on the upper right with 4 3/4-inch screws. Then, locate speaker 250B. It's small, dark brown, and it has a slanted top. Use one short screw, found in carton F, to secure the speaker from underneath to the bracket. Please note there are no wires going to this speaker. Now, locate the other 250B dark brown speaker, which is attached to the small metal shelf from pre-assembly, and slide it onto the upper tube arms. Secure the shelf to the tubes underneath with 4 screws, and please note there are also no wires going to this speaker. Locate the pre-assembled large metal shelf that has the JBL MA710 receiver attached and slide it onto the lower metal tube arms. Attach the power cable you ran earlier to the back of the MA710. Since this was the shortest power cable, please double check that this is plugged into the power strip inside the metal cabinet. You can test the tuner by turning the power strip on, toggling the power switch on the back of the tuner on, and then clicking the power button itself and it will illuminate. Once you see that it's illuminated, you can turn that back off and you can turn the power strip back off. Now, secure the shelf to the tubes underneath with 4 screws. Locate the 200p speaker. It's dark brown and it's a subwoofer. It already has mounting brackets that you did earlier during pre-assembly. On the back, there are 2 dials that need to be positioned exactly. The crossover has to be at 50% and the volume has to be at 100%. Please position those dials before putting this onto the display. Position the subwoofer so you can insert the yellow jack and the power cord, then push it into position and screw both brackets into the backboard. Okay, when things are at this stage, it's really important that we do things in this order. The center speaker is going to get installed first. Then the satellite speakers are going to get installed. Then we're going to push this whole thing up against the back and attach it permanently. Then comes the tall, long speakers, which they refer to as front, and then the subwoofer underneath. The reason why that's important is we need to do the center speaker before we do the side speakers because we won't be able to screw them into the bracket. And we need to do the satellite speakers before we put this thing into the back because we need to be able to gain access to the back here to attach the satellite speakers to the brackets. Now locate speaker stage 245C and remove it from the carton. Flip it over and remove the 4 rubber pads. There are 2 on the left and 2 on the right. You're going to leave the 2 rubber pads in the middle. Also, remove the small screws under those 4 pads. Those screws are going to be replaced by 4 similar looking screws, but they're longer. And those are in carton D. Please find those screws now. This is the center speaker. I'm going to carry it over because we have to prep this thing real quick, but it's really easy. I'm just going to set this on top here. Now, I've already taken the rubber stopper off of this, and off of this. But it's simple, it's just a sticker. Once you get your finger in there and you pull it off, next thing you're going to do is you're actually just going to take the small wood screws that are in here out. And once these are out, you're going to find the longer screws like this, and you can see it looks exactly like the screw that I just took out, except these are much longer. These are in box D, and these are what we're going to use to affix the bottom of this speaker up through the bracket on this. Then set the speaker on top of the metal frame. Attach the gray speaker wire marked center to the terminals, red to red, black to black. That will be the same on every single speaker that you're going to connect today. Now, set the speaker in position on top and attach from underneath with the 4 screws that you got from carton D. Locate the speaker carton stage 240B with 2 speakers inside. Start on the right side of the metal frame and set the speaker on top of the frame, on top of the center speaker that you just installed temporarily, while attaching the gray speaker wire marked rear right to the speaker. Now attach the wired speaker to the bracket on the right side of the metal cabinet with 3 screws. Then tuck the excess wires back into the metal cabinet through the big hole. Then you're going to repeat those steps with the other stage 240B speaker by attaching the gray speaker wire marked rear left to the terminals, and then attach it to the bracket with 3 screws and feed any excess cables through the big hole on that side of the metal cabinet. Now it's time to attach the metal frame to the backboard. Slide the metal frame and cabinet all the way up against the backboard while feeding all the cords and wires through the square hole. When the frame is up against the backboard, there can be no wires trapped between the frame and the backboard. Install all 6 screws through the angle brackets through the threaded holes in the backboard. And if the brackets don't line up with the holes, there are adjustable levelers in the legs that will adjust up or down to line up the metal frame with the holes. Locate the 2 large speakers marked 280F with the attached mounting brackets that you did during pre-assembly. These speakers go on either side of the metal frame. Be sure to attach the gray speaker wire marked front right to the speaker on the right side of the frame, and the gray speaker wire marked front left to the left side of the metal frame. But before you plug these in, it's important to take note that these have to be plugged into the terminals marked front, not into the terminals above those that say height. These speakers will not function properly if you have these plugged into the height terminals. So make sure that you have all of these connections plugged into the front terminals on the bottom. Once the right speaker is connected and once the left speaker is connected, slide the speakers toward the backboard and screw the brackets into the backboard. Now it's time to locate the subwoofer speaker 220p with the bracket that you mounted during pre-assembly. In the back there are 2 dials just like the other subwoofer, and you're going to position those dials exactly like you did on the other subwoofer. So the crossover should be at 50% and the volume should be at 100%. Make sure that you have both dials set before you proceed. Pull gently on the yellow jack and the power cord, set the subwoofer at the edge of the shelf, and you can attach the yellow jack and the power cord to the back. Then simply slide the subwoofer underneath the metal frame, push back to the backboard, and screw both brackets into the backboard. The power strip for the display should be turned on. Pull the 3 loose cables through the front of the metal cabinet as shown. The 3 cables that you're grabbing are HDMI, power, and USB. At this point, it's important to check all of the connections in the power strip. Make sure every single power cord is firmly plugged in and turn on the tuner. Okay, one thing we're going to do is we're going to change out the SD card. You were sent an SD card, a new one that has new content on it, and these are really easy. You just gently push on the top, they're spring loaded. Once it pops out like that, then you just reach in and gently grab it, and then you grab your new one, and the new one looks exactly the same. You put it gently into the slot, and then once it's in the slot, you gently push down until it clicks. Locate the 2 thumb screws in the front of the metal box. Remove them. You will be using them later to install the white cover. Locate the touchscreen and metal bracket located in the 39-HARSV6-24 box and take them out. Remember, the USB is on one side of the screen, and the power and HDMI are on the other side of the screen. You're going to plug them into the appropriate jacks, USB, power, and HD in, that's the HDMI. Then remove the wing nuts from the 4 welded studs at the front of the metal box. Then once everything is connected and firmly connected in place, you push all the loose cords back into the metal cabinet and attach the bracket and screen inside the metal cabinet using the wing nuts provided. Be sure that the screen is slanting up slightly. Then install the white cover by placing the lip at the top of the cover into the long slot in the metal cabinet, and then swing it shut and add the 2 thumb screws. But before you tighten those, make sure that there are no cables stuck between the cabinet and the cover. The next step is very important because you're going to be putting the MA710 receiver into demo mode, which requires a specific button press sequence. And also remember this, when you get started, you'll only have 1 minute to perform this demo mode sequence to be able to put the receiver into demo mode. So you go over to the MA710 receiver, you reach to the back of the unit and toggle that power switch on. Once you've powered that switch on, you have 1 minute. The next step is to push the power button on the front of the unit. After you've clicked the power button on the front of the unit and it illuminates, you press the back button, the surround previous button, and then the volume control wheel twice. Again, that sequence is back, surround previous, volume control wheel, volume control wheel. Then the screen will read demo mode starting. Next, go through a touchscreen sound check. As you press a component on the touchscreen, be sure that audio comes from that component. Lastly, place 8 Price Here plastic channels as shown in the instructions picture. Peel the adhesive cover off and press against the surface for 10 seconds.